module this week here. Jeremy Conn will be your instructor. He'll tell you more about what he does in a second here. And we had another TA synced up here, but we have another TA who was pregnant, and so they unfortunately couldn't be here. So Cash will be serving as the TA this week. So really appreciate Cash and Jeremy.
Thanks, Jesse.
It's a really awesome project. I think y'all going to enjoy. So without further ado, hand that to Jeremy.
Thanks, Jesse. Yep, we're good. Hi, everyone. So I'll be your instructor for week 5 for Flexbox, Advanced CSS, and Responsive Techniques. So I'll just start off by talking a little bit about myself. I'm currently a front-end developer over at AXA. Co-workers with Jesse, Cash. I work mostly in Angular projects and a little bit on databases, mainly MongoDB. But I wouldn't say that's my strong suit. My strong suit's usually UI. In the past, I've interned at Sidearm Sports. If you guys don't know what that is, that's a digital company that does college athletic websites. Pretty much any D1 college you can think of, they probably do the athletic website for. While I was the intern there, I was also a student at Syracuse. And it was kind of funny how that internship came about. So as you can see, I was a TA for multiple web design classes at Syracuse, including Jeff Passetti's. I'm sure you guys all know him. And all the web development professors there kind of had a hand in Sidearm Sports. The intro to web design teacher at the iSchool is also the vice president at Sidearm Sports. They used to be headquartered in the iSchool at Syracuse, but they've recently moved downtown into the State Tower building. And that was a really great learning experience. I got to do hands-on websites, hands-on coding on websites for it was almost 40 schools over a 3-year period. So they definitely got me really good experience, and I definitely would not be the developer I am today if I didn't have that. So just a little bit about my approach to building websites. I always like to design and develop with mobile in mind. I know when you guys did your tutorials with Jeff, he did mobile first. I don't develop mobile first, but I don't start developing until I know what I'm going to do. So I usually start with desktop layouts, and then I will break it down. So you'll see that too with our project. I like to keep it simple. A lot of times I think you can get yourself into trouble by trying to do too many fancy things. And you'll notice too in my style sheets, I always like to do subtle animations, like little transitions, little hover states. I just think they add a lot to different websites, and it can really improve the perceived quality, even if it's something simple like, having a little transition with color, a little menu animation or something like that. So before we begin our project, I just want to go over a little bit of my teaching style. So first off, I don't have any formal teaching experience. I was a teaching assistant, but I never actually taught a class like this. But just from being a teaching assistant, I can kind of gather that I do better when I'm hands-on coding and kind of explaining as I go along. So there won't be too many slides. It'll kind of be like a code along type thing, and then I'll also have you guys do pair programming. If I'm going too fast at any point, or if you need further clarification on anything, please don't hesitate to ask. Just let me know, and I'll kind of slow down and give some further explanation. And my goal for this week is to try to get through as much of that project as possible. I know this is kind of like the last week for front-end UI development, so I kind of want to give you guys like a reference project that you can use for your capstone projects and any projects you do in the future. Also, I will not be using Sass. I'll be just using pure CSS, but I thought some people might say that. If you feel comfortable using Sass, you're more than welcome to. I'm familiar with it, so I can help you guys out with that. But I will not be using Sass just for this project. just because first of all, I just got a new laptop and I didn't have it set up yet. So a little bit of laziness on my part. But also I just think I wanted to focus on the CSS properties themselves and not necessarily, having issues with like the terminal and stuff like that. Just minimize roadblocks. So to kick off, I actually want you guys to partner up and do Flexbox Froggy. This will test your knowledge of Flexbox. I know Jeff has gone over it very briefly in the past, but I just kind of want to get a gauge of where you guys are at, and also review your practice. So if you just pop that open. You guys might have seen this before, but I'll go back to level 1. Yeah. Yeah, I saw you pinged it in the Slack channel. What's that? It's very helpful, yes. So you guys can use either the beginner mode, which will give you some of these hints, or if you're feeling confident, you can do intermediate or expert, which will randomize the levels and also hide those. It's up to you, but just take the next 20 minutes. If you want to partner up with somebody, feel free, and just see how many levels you guys can get through. There you go. And after this, we'll probably take a break, but when we come back, I'll go through all these levels. I'll explain as we go on. So. You're stuck on the first one. It's right here. It saved your progress for some reason. So if you have a flex container, you can use that flex container to center all the items. Yes. Yep. Yes. Yep. Centered in a way. Centered with like space between the items. Yeah, is a good way to think about it. It will add equal space around each element. So think of it as like an imaginary 20 pixels of padding on each side of each element. It's all the same spacing. Yep. You'll do that often. I'll see. Um, no. Not really. You're talking just flex properties? Oh, I see what you mean. Um, Off the top of my head, I can't think of any. Obviously, like you can't do like a position absolute and then put position fixed on that same element. So things like that, like different values of the same property, you can't do. Um, the only thing I can think of is floats in Flexbox. This week, I kind of want you to ever forget that floats existed, just because you'll see it's a lot easier to get things lined the way you want with Flexbox. You don't have to worry about a clear fix on floats to get things to bump to a new line or any of that stuff. So I started to use Grid. I still prefer Flexbox just because I'm more comfortable with it. But Grid definitely does the promising. The only thing that turns me off right now is the browser support. It's not fully supported yet. Once that happens, then I'm definitely gonna dive in. There's actually so there. Definitely check that out. Definitely check that out. Yeah, it's definitely powerful. It handles like utter space. The Flexbox you can do it, just you gotta know what to put where to get it to work the way you want. Also, CSS Grid course. See, so one person actually watched Xbox course, which is just like basically what we're going to do today. Stuff is good. Anybody finish yet? Just curious. Just curious. No rush. This game was like a big part of learning Flexbox for me. It's like in our web classes, we would have races to see who could finish all 24 levels the fastest. At some point it does. That's where you got to do the expert mode, so it randomizes it. So you just don't get used to doing this. Then yeah. Go about 5 more minutes and then I'll quick break. Okay, you can do this in expert mode, right? You can do this in expert mode, right? You can do this in expert, right? Black Froggy.
So there's actually probably a spot called by default all others have 1 and 0. So any value that you give above 0 will move it to the end. And any value below 0 will move it to the front. Now you can set order on all the items and give it a specific, I want this one first, this one second, this one third. But if you only need like one item specific item to be in the front, that's when you can use order. Bring it all the way to the front.
No, this is my only week. Yeah. Next week starts JavaScript, I think. Right? JavaScript. I believe Gus is teaching that one. I'm not sure. All right, it's 7 o'clock. Let's take like a 10-15 minute break. When we come back, we'll go through each of these levels together, and I'll kind of explain as we go along. If you want to keep going, though. The last one's chicken.
I've been almost there for like 5,000.
Oh, really? $1 million?
Yes, right now going on like $1 million.
Should have went for that.
We can do it like on top of the Marriott.
Rooftop coding. Some rooftop coding? That sounds fun. Okay.
Oh my god.
Figure it out? Or was that a frustration?
Like I close one like 3 different ways. Nothing quite right. Well, this one was like, but then it said, that's right. Okay, question. Can I specify a color?
Yeah, just change all the colors. Is it like blue or the structure? Then I'm thinking about like the fields are like a small thing. So right now this is like structure. So if you find it with the PM, it would be the so right now if you look side, so all the stuff is every time when the diet side of the end, which means that they all have to order like the period with the customer. Everyone is not.
Freaking got it.
This is for a foot good, right? So good.
Thanks for no help. I appreciate you letting me do
It
that.
feels much better, right, when you get it yourself.
So much better than you do it yourself. Now you believe me. Now you want to be happy.
Did all 24 levels.
Yeah.
Oh, it's success.
Depends on what you're talking about.
heads up, this one is the 15-foot long one. If you want to use it, I'm just going to put it in the bin, so feel free to tear it open if you like, but that one should be good.
Did you guys buy that one? It's a series. 1 minutes.
I didn't see it from not here. There you go. No, right under that. And so after I said that you were 100, because you're cheating. And she was like,
It's good amount of catch.
that's what I'm saying. Like, if you did it, cheating yourself.
All right, let's go over this together. Let's start on these. All right, so before we start going through these levels, I just want to explain kind of what I think is the most important thing when using Flexbox is to remember what your flex direction is. So there's two main ones. Obviously, it's flex direction row and flex direction column. When it's row, your axis is from left to right, and when it's column, it's from top to bottom. Now there are two other properties, row reverse and wrap reverse. So they both do what you think they would. They'll do horizontal and vertical, but they will flip the starting point. So if you do row reverse, things will start on the right-hand side and go as far as to the left as the content determines. And when you do column reverse, it will start from the bottom and go as tall as it can, determined by the content within it. So if you're ever struggling with something, always try to remember what your flex direction is set at. All right, so let's get going through some of these levels. So obviously this first one, they give us the answer, justify content flex n. That will put all the items within your container. So imagine this is one big container right here. it will put all of them to the end, which in this case is the right hand side. So if we do content, and it will just for the second one. Oh, this is gonna populate all my answers. Let's see if we can clear the cache on it. There we go. All right, I think it got it. All right, so now we have two items that we need to get into the center. So direction. So we're working on the main axis here. So we will do justify content. Now we'll center. So again, if this were flex direction column, this would be centering those items vertically on the left hand side. So all right. So this container, we have 3 items, and we need to get them evenly spaced out in the container. For this, we will use justify content space around. And I was explaining this earlier. Imagine this is putting equal margin on all your flex items within the container. So obviously these pixel values aren't correct, but imagine it's 20 pixels on each side of each element, and that will space them evenly. It's a good property to use if you don't have to have a set amount of space in between them, but you need to give them some space to breathe. And it's really good for responsive because then you don't have to change your margin at every viewport. Again, these are populating the answers, but so now we need to get them spread apart, and this will push all the items to the edge as wide as the container goes. Now we're using space. So again, right now, so I'm assuming this one they set the flex direction as column because flex end again is the main axis. Oh, I see. No. So this flex container is flex direction row. So we want to go on the opposite axis, which we call the cross axis. And for that, we will use align items. And now put them on. So always remember, justify is the main axis, align items is the cross axis. So this is one that you'll see a lot. Flexbox is great at centering things, so you'll often use justify content center as well as align items center. This is definitely the one I use the most when I'm using Flexbox, is centering things. Again, we got 3 items up at the top. One thing I should note too, the default property for justify content is always flex start. So again, if you have a flex container that's flex direction row, it'll always start on the left. And if you have align items, the default property for that is actually stretch. So for example, if I were to like throw a background color on these frogs right here, they would actually have a height, the width, a height as tall as this container. So that's always the default. You would think it would be like flex start for align items, but it's not. So that can trip you up sometimes. So to get these in the center, these are actually spaced evenly around. Then again, cross-axis, we need to get them to the end, so we will use align items. So this is the first introduction to what I was talking about earlier, row reverse. To be honest, in real life usage, I've very rarely had to use row reverse and column reverse. I can see where they would be beneficial, but they don't really come up too often, so I wouldn't worry too much about those. But in this instance, again, we need to start them on the other side, so we'll flip direction, row. Again, this is just flipping a direction. By default, it's flex direction row. If you don't set flex direction, that's what you're going to get. But we need these to go from top to bottom. So we will simply flex direction. So for this, we need to reverse the order of all the items. So we will use our flex direction row reverse. So that flips them in the order we need, but now we need to get them back to the other side. So again, by default, it's justify content flex start. So for row reverse, that's starting on the right hand side. Kind of flips everything. So if we do justify flex and that'll be what we need to do. Again, kind of the same thing. Flex direction goes to the bottom. And then we want to push them as far down as we can. Just like there is row reverse, there's column reverse. So that gets in where we want to be in order. And justify. Oh, no, that is not what that needs to be. That needs to be evenly spaced from top to bottom. So we'll use space between. So now, kind of starting around this level, we're getting a little bit more complicated. Again, most of the layouts that I do with Flexbox, you don't have to get this too, in depth, but they are helpful to know just in case the situation does arise. So flex direction, you flip that order. We need to center them along our main axis. So we will specify and then on the cross axis, we want to get them as far down as we can. Just curious, by a show of hands, how many people got past level 14? Did you guys all get past that? Nice. Yeah. So this is also a helpful property for Flexbox. And it comes in handy a lot when you get designs that designers kind of don't actually think about the code behind it before they give it to you. For example, like reordering things on mobile layout, a section that was in the middle before on mobile needs to come to the top. This is where this border property can come in handy. So by default, all flex items will have a flex value of 0 if you don't set one. And as soon as you go to a value below that, it will bring it to the front. And if you go a value above that, it'll bring it to the back. If you only do it order property on one item, you'll get what you expect. If you do an order property on multiple items, it'll be exactly the order, the number you put them. So if I were to put yellow as 1, green as 2, red as 3, yellow would be first, green would be second, red would be third. So in this case, we only want yellow to be first. So again, the default property is 0. So we will give it a lower value, and we can just do -1. Wait, which one is it? Oh, we want yellow to be at the end. I gotcha. I thought we moved that to first. But you saw what happened too. So if I did -1, this would be good. Again, this one wasn't in the beginning to begin with. We want to give it a lower value than the default value. So we can just do -1. This doesn't have to be -1. It could be -5, 15, doesn't matter. As long as it's lower than all the other items, it'll move it to the front. Alright, so again, that one kind of gave it away, but there is another property called align self. So if you ever have a scenario where you set a flex direction, so in this case it's row, you've spaced out your items, there's one item that you want to align differently, that's where you can use align self. However, it only works on the cross axis. So similar to align items, you're spacing things on the cross axis from what you set on the flex direction. So align self will align one item on the cross axis differently than the rest of them. Now you're probably going to say, is there a justify self? No. I wish there was, but there isn't. It's kind of silly that there isn't, but that's just the way people will create flexbox. So again, we just need this yellow frog to get to the end. So again, we need these yellow items to be after the screen frog. Any value over the default will get them where we want. And we can move those. Actually, that did not do it. I'm actually curious why that's happening. Did you just not read the property when I entered it before? Did anybody catch that? Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. And then we need to move those down separate from the green frogs. So by default, those are flex start. That was level 17. Yep. So this is our first introduction to flex wrap. This is a property you can use when your container has items that reach their maximum width, and then you want them to go down to a new line. So if you don't, you kind of see up here they get squished. So we'll try to fit those items in that container regardless of how they look. But flex wrap kind of keeps those at a reasonable size that you set, and then as those limits get reached, it'll bump it down to a new line. So by default, it's no wrap, which means it won't wrap to a new line. And then to get those to a new line, you use flex wrap. And there's also wrap reverse, but again, I've never used that in real life. So flex wrap. We'll get those items down to their right paths.
Again, you can do flex wrap with flex direction column. Another one I can't say I've ever actually had to use. It's kind of a weird scenario, but if we do flex direction column, and let's specify that we want those to wrap instead of being dispersed vertically, that will just go with parts. So this is just like a shorthand way of writing flex properties. You can use flex flow, and then we're going to basically set the flex direction and then also specify that we want it to wrap. I always type them out separately. It's just a habit I have. Flex flow is a little bit cleaner, but I think it's just easier to identify what values I'm setting if they're in their own individual property. Alright, so this one's a little bit tricky to get a hang of. So like align items, they align the individual flex items within their container on the cross-axis. Align content will align the lines of items that have wrapped based on the cross-axis. Go to align content. Start. So basically that's it. As those items wrap, we always want them to be up at the top, so we'll set that as flex start. And let's imagine if we want them to be at the end, we'll just use flex. So this one is where it gets really tricky. So obviously we want these to be flex direction column, but if we do flex direction column, these red ones are going to start at the top. So we will flip the flex direction column, the flex direction column reverse. Column open reverse. So now those items are where we want vertically, but we need to get them to the center. So our main axis right now is top to bottom. So we will use align items for the cross axis. And now why is that? So we centered, right, so we've centered the items horizontally, but then the lines have wrapped. So because up here, you can see the styles they've already written for them. They have flex wrap. So it actually doesn't even, you could do both of these, but it doesn't want me to do both of these. I want to do two of them. So you can get the same effect with just align content. So I was going to do both align item center and align content, but align content will get the job done. So now we got this funny one. So you kind of see that we need this red frog down at the bottom, and also most of these items are going to be spaced vertically. So we'll do flex direction column reverse. So it kind of gets in what we want. So now we need to move most of the items to the end. So we will do flex end. So now we need, we can only do reverse, because we want those to be on the other side. I might have enough, but so I want these to be spaced apart. section column reverse. The reason I have this one. We got flex section column, so like it says column. Right, because since we're wrapping, we need to use what do you mean? For these values? So yeah, I'll start in. So by default, we want this red frog to be at the bottom, and most of these items will be centered vertically or aligned vertically. That's where we use that section. Now we need these items to wrap, so we will do flex wrap reverse. Now we need 2 lines that have wrapped to be spaced apart. So for that we use align content spaced. And then we want to get those 2 yellow guys centered, so we will use just content. I believe, yes. Yeah. Does anybody have questions on this one? Again, getting into this kind of this much complexity with column reverse and wrap reverse, you don't have to use it that much in real life. But again, there might be that one use case where it comes in handy. So align items will center your items within one container and one line. As those items wrap, that's where if you want those 2 lines to be spaced wholly apart or close together, that's where you use align content. It's the spacing of the lines that have wrapped, where align items is the individual items if they were to be in one line. Does that make sense? Kind of? Yes, if you're not using flex wrap, you'll never have to use align content. Right. Yep. Yep.
I'm sorry, could you say that again about the using flex wrap?
Yes. So when you have lines that have wrapped and you want to space those, like space between the lines, that's where you use align content.
Right.
If you want the items within a single container spaced, that's where you use align items. Basically, use align items when you haven't used flex wrap. They also have another game called Grid Garden. That's basically Flexbox Froggy, but for CSS Grid, which is a new CSS item that we can use to lay out our pages. I personally haven't gotten too far into it yet. The browser support for it is still kind of limited, but it does look promising. It looks a lot more handy for getting equal gutter space in certain scenarios. You don't have to kind of play around with margins and then combining that with like just by content center and things like that. But definitely good to check out if you got some free time. It's definitely an up-and-coming thing that will only get more popular. Grid Garden, it's got a link for it right at the bottom of the page. All right. All right, so we get started with our project. I just kind of want to show you guys what we'll be building this week. So the project for this week is going to be like kind of a replica Netflix site. So you can see we kind of have our kind of profiles that you see when you log in. Only one of these is hooked up right now. And then when you click onto this, it kind of comes into that main view that you're all used to. We have an HTML5 video that's kind of looping in the background here. We got some JavaScript to play pause. We got some hover states here. And then we got our list. Hopefully, after doing that Flexbox Froggy thing, you kind of have an idea of how you might lay these out to get these in this order. And then we got some fancy CSS transforms to kind of scale those out and add some box shadow to these. So this is the project we're going to be building, and obviously it's responsive. This is what we're focusing on this week. So as you break down, those items will wrap. Get as big as they can. We have our controls centered, play pause or video, and then we threw all our nav links kind of in a little nav menu up at the top. It's kind of like a mobile app layout type thing. You guys can use this link as kind of your like holy grail to kind of reference off of if you're trying to, you know, go back and forth between your code and this code. I urge you not to just inspect the element and copy what's there. If you get stuck, feel free, but try to do it on your own if you can. But yeah, that's what we'll be building. Sound cool? All right. Yep, so we'll kind of go just like piece by piece. We'll start with like a header, and then we'll go main, stuff like that. And we'll work through like that. So again, what we'll learn while going over this project, Flexbox obviously, using percentage-based widths and heights when necessary, and sometimes using calc, the way you can kind of get widths that are dynamic based on certain values. Media queries, obviously, giving certain styles at certain viewports. Css transitions, so like you saw when you hover over the button, it will transition to color from an opaque value to white, stuff like that. CSS transforms, so like when I hovered over those boxes, you can see it's kind of scaled up. Absolute, relative, and fixed positioning. We'll use all of those in this to get, say, for example, the buttons on top of the video. We'll use absolute positioning. And you'll notice the header is always up at the top. For that, we use fixed positioning. We'll show you how to add video to your site, obviously, using HTML5 video. We'll show you how to add icons to your website. You can see we have like open nav icons, little search icons up at the top, and much more. It'll be lots of things. All right. Thanks. That makes you feel good. It was fun building it, to be honest with you. You'll see most of the images I just took. You can kind of inspect and then grab them from their servers. So they are images that were taken right from Netflix. But yeah. So to start, I've created kind of a starter repo to get all the images that we'll need, the videos, as well as the font. I kind of found a font that was really, really similar to the Netflix font. It's not. So I include that for you. So follow the link in these slides, and that will take you to the GitHub repo, where we can clone that down. And I'll do that with you guys. So I think Chrissy went over GitHub with you guys, so you're somewhat familiar with this process. But oh, really? You guys have phones? Okay, perfect. Well, I don't consider myself a GitHub pro at all. I pretty much know the bare bones to get by with GitHub. But to clone a new repo, you just go to this button on the upper right. It says clone or download. And then they'll give you this URL, but there's a handy button over here that says copy to clip. Like that. And what do I want? You guys already have Git installed, right? Okay, cool. So what we'll do is we'll just create a dummy folder on your desktop. Doesn't matter what it's called because we're really only using this to get the content from that. There's a button to the right of the URL. I'll pop that open again. This little clipboard, that'll copy that link so you don't have to kind of, yeah. So we'll just create a dummy folder here. I'll say like Netflix content. And what I want you to do is open up VS Code. Open up that folder that we just created in VS Code. Name that content in VS Code. I just put on that's just one of them. So after we have that folder, we can right click sidebar and do open an integrated terminal. So if you just hover over your sidebar where you normally see all your files, and then you do a right click, I think it should be the same on Mac. You'll see a list of options, and then at the very top it should say open an integrated terminal. Or you guys not see that? Oh, is that a shortcut I have? Oh, okay. I thought that was built in. Sorry, yes. So yeah, up at the top on your kind of links up here, just go to View. A little bit halfway down, there's Terminal. Right. Nope, we don't have to. For some reason, this doesn't recognize my. Cash, do you know why this might happen? When I do view terminal, it goes to the desktop and not the folder I have open. Do you know that? So when I do view terminal, it doesn't open up Netflix content. It opens up desktop.
No, it's weird. I think it's because I think for them, the actual open.
Doesn't seem right. Maybe just change the images. Might not like that space.
Yeah.
Well, it's the desktop anyway. Yeah, I'll just have to reopen it. So to clone that repo into the folder that we created,
Shift plus.
for what?
Control plus. Oh, you have a Mac?
No, this is Windows.
Yeah, Windows. Control plus to make it bigger so they can see.
Oh, I see. Is that good for you guys? Can you see that in the back? So to clone that repo, we will just do git clone, and then paste, and that will paste the URL that we copied. Two words, git clone. Yep. So what's separate? You create your folder on the desktop, right? The terminal. Yep. So you copied this link from the GitHub. It should be in the slides, and it's also attached to the Google Classroom for today. So just copy that URL, and then we're going to go to our terminal. Oh, I've already done this, but so you should see your folder here, and then you're just going to type git clone, and then paste in that URL, and then just hit enter. And after you guys do that, you should see you have a few folders here. So we have a CSS folder. If you open that up, you can see the only thing that's in the style sheet right now is a CSS reset. I think Jeff might have showed this to you before. This is the RFI reset. That's the one I use. It resets all the things that need to be done. Right, exactly. It's just like normalize. It just does some different things. And then, so RFI reset is just another reset, kind of like normalized CSS that you guys have been using, I guess. So basically, it just gets rid of some browser defaults, like padding on the body and stuff like that. So it's handy to use when you want to create your own styles. You can, but you don't have to. This is already used for you. And then below the CSS reset, you'll see some font face properties. So we have another folder in this repo called fonts, and this is basically the font. Since I'm not pulling this from like a service, I just have the font files themselves in this folder. This is how we you would see this code generated from a font generator like Scroll. Did Jeff show you that at all? That's a way to have a font file to put into a web font generator. I'll show you that. Squirrel. So for example, I had this Pierre Sans font that just happened to be close to Netflix. So you can actually run that font file through a web font generator. You guys don't have to do this, by the way. So there's a link to your generator, and basically you just upload that font file, and it will actually spit out a zip file that has all this for you. So like I didn't type this out, this @font face, that was generated for me. Basically you just copy that into your own style sheet. So that's kind of our starter CSS file. I haven't linked that to our HTML yet, but we have our images folder. So that will be kind of the cover images you see for all the films and TV shows, as well as like the Netflix logo. And then we have a videos folder. So I included a few different stock videos. If you guys want to choose one, doesn't matter. But that's kind of like that featured video you see when you first go to the homepage. And then we have just a starter index.html file with the title Netflix. That's the only thing that's been added. But what we'll do, just so you guys can get practice with like pushing and pulling, is we'll actually move this content into our own folder that we'll be working off of, and then we'll get that connected to your guys' repos on your own GitHubs. So that way you can push and pull to your own repos, and then we'll eventually actually show you how to deploy your site on a service like Netlify, which can host static sites for free. And basically, to do that, all you do is point it to the GitHub repo itself, and then you can have a Netlify domain. So, for example, I did that for our project. So you'll see the URL here is cic-netflix.netlify.com. So this is hosted on Netlify. Just because you're hosting on Netlify doesn't mean you have to have a .netlify.com domain name. You can bring your own if you buy it like on a service called Google Domains or GoDaddy. It doesn't matter where you buy it. But this is free, so you don't have to pay for it.
what makes it a static and
So dynamic websites are websites that have like databases behind them. So for example, like a WordPress website or something like that. So this is just HTML, CSS, images. It doesn't have a database running behind it. So we can host that for free on Netlify. Yep. So that's a good thing about Netlify is it has like automated CI/CD, which means as soon as you hit push on GitHub, it will build the site again and show your changes live on the site. So it's basically Netlify, Netlify. It's all free. GitHub's free, Netlify's free. It's great. All right. So what we'll do, again, just for the reason behind, we're going to move this content to a new folder. Right now, you guys are actually connected to my repo. So you'll see in the lower left here, it says master. It's the master branch of my repository that I created. So if you were to push and pull, everybody would be push and pull to the same repository, and then there'd be merge conflicts everywhere. So we're just going to create another folder, and this is the folder that we'll be working off of for this week. So this one we might want to give just a more descriptive name. So I'll do just so I know which one's which. No, this is a different folder. So we only need that folder so we could clone into it. And then we're basically just gonna copy and paste those. So we have an empty folder on the desktop right now. So if we just make this a little bit smaller, actually, why don't we get our GitHub set up first? That's probably a better step to do. So you guys all have your own personal GitHubs, right? You guys set those up. So we'll show you guys how to create a new repository. I guess Chris might have gone over this, but if you just go to GitHub and then click on your little profile icon on the upper right and go to your repositories, that'll bring you to a page with all your repositories that you've ever created. This is where also you can set them as public or private, so public and other people can see them, private only you can see them. But there's a nice little green button over here in the top right, view. We're going to click on that, and then we're going to give our repository a name. So let's do I wouldn't, because you'll see when you clone the repo, it will add this repository name as like a subfolder. So if it's the same name, it might get a little confusing. But so for example, I'm just going to do CIC. I actually already have one. That's what I need. And then in terms of public or private, it's up to you. I would just make it public. That way other people, if they're visiting your GitHub, they can kind of see your work that you've done in the past. Private, I guess, is when you're working on like an actual project or a business, and you kind of want to keep your code separate so others can't see it. I think so, correct? Yeah. After you make it public, you can go back to make it private, and vice versa. So we're just going to hit create repository after you give it a name. Yes, we can do that. So that basically creates just like a dummy markdown file. It kind of explains what's going on. So after we created that repo, you see we have oh yes. So after we create a repo, so we'll click that. We're going to open as well. The repo that we created, that's going to be for dummy. It's just the text. So now we're going to kind of do the same thing we did to the content. See, created. Again, Conn, and paste it. We'll give you a little warning saying you created the repository. So by default, it should get you into the right direction. There's a little weird sometimes like one level up, so I have to then type in cd net. Yes, that's what I called it. Again, if you want to call it that same thing, just for consistency's sake, that's fine. Git clone, and then it's in that link to the repo you just created. And you'll see the folder that it creates inside is the name of the repo you created. Everybody good? So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the dummy folder that we did. Oh, sorry, I can go back. Yep. It's kind of a painful process right now, but believe me, it'll save a lot of time and energy in the long run. Does anybody know if Windows has that kind of zoom feature that Jeff? I saw in a couple of his videos. There's like a little shortcut that he had that zoom in on part of the screen. So that'll make things bigger, but I thought I saw like he could like zoom in just on a specific part of the page without having to like bump up the font size. It might be a Mac only thing. I'm not sure. It's handy because, I mean, trying to see stuff on the TV, I don't get one. Is there a shortcut with the mouse to do it? Oh, okay. I have a Logitech. Does it say if it's specific, like brand specific? I'll have to try that out. Put a trackpad in. Windows Plus? It kinda. I guess it can be. I don't know. That could be handy though. Quickly zoom in. Oh, that did something different. Oh boy. I'm gonna close that. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, inside another folder separate from the main one that we'll be working on. Again, you only clone that initial one basically to get all the content for you guys. And rather than giving you a zip file, I thought just we could text. Yep.
That's what we're gonna do right now.
So now what we'll do is we'll open up the folder. You can do it just in your file viewer. Yep. So this was our dummy one that has all the content in there. And you can ignore the .git because that just is what Git creates after it initializes the repo. But what we're going to do is we're going to copy all these files and then put them into the folder that we just created. So this is the one that we downloaded from my repository. Yep. That'll be everything we need to kind of get the ground running on this. And then we're just going to drag that and put that into our repository folder. And I'll say, do you want to add folders to this workspace? And then I'll say yes. And it will kind of auto expand. You can kind of close those up. So you might run into this too, where you'll see mine didn't actually get pasted into the folder itself. It's kind of outside. So if I close up Netflix Reel, it kind of got pasted outside. So we can also just do this, open up the other folder and paste it in. Sometimes VS Code's copy and paste can be a little finicky. So what I'll do is minimize that, and I'll just open up the folder here. Netflix Reel. So now I'm in the right folder. And again, yes. And we're just going to click and drag that over. Oh, sorry. Let's see if I can do that. Windows. Got a little bit better. All right, so this is. So I just moved all that content that was in our Netflix starter, which had all our starter files, and I pasted that into the folder that we're going to be working off of that's connected to your own repository. So you see, this was the folder that the repo created, and now it has all my content from the start files. So that might be one indication of the repository. So you're in the folder that you regardless of what you want. In your lower left, you can see your master. So it looks like it's just one folder. So what you can do, so is that what you name your repository, or did you name the document? You might have the starter folder and then these in the same one. So if you open up, so just create another folder on your desktop. And we'll just use one folder again. It's just easier. So we can and that number will tell you how much All right. So for those of you that have your GitHub folder all set up, you'll see, again, I was saying over there, VS Code's GitHub tools are on this little button on the side panel, and they give you a number readout of how many files that you've changed haven't been committed yet. So when we copy and pasted all those files into this folder, it added those 65 files. It says they haven't been committed yet. Yep. So you commit it, and that kind of stores a local version. And then if you're the only person working on a project, you can get away with not doing this. But it's always good practice to pull before you push, because then when you pull, you're getting the latest code that's out in the repo, and then you want to push it out. That can help you avoid merge conflicts in the future, and it just makes things a lot easier. You don't have to use a command line. You can if you want, but again, VS Code's got this built-in Git manager. I just find it easier to use, especially for someone that doesn't know a lot of Git. So now we have this the GitHub tools open in this panel. There's a little box here that says message. Let's see if I can pop it open. This is where we type in our commit message. So you'll see, I'll open up one of my repositories just to show. So I was in our folder that we created with our repo, and I'm just showing them the GitHub tools panel. I'm just showing them where the commit message is, and then where that shows up in GitHub, like when you type in the commit. Your folder that you created for your repositories. From the starter. Yep. Thanks, Kat. Yep. So that's what we're going to do right now. So this, yep, always commit before you push. And then in VS Code, you'll see all these files haven't been what's called staged, which they won't be included in the commit. So if you kind of hover over at the top, see if I can make this bigger. There's a little plus button here, and that will stage all changes. So all the files that have changed, it will include them in this upcoming commit. So if you hit that plus button, so there's a little zoom out. So there's a tab up here that says changes. When you hover over this, it gives a plus sign to the far right, and that will stage all your changes. So now you'll see all these files are under this little header called stage changes, which means they'll be included in this next commit. So the next step for committing is to provide a message. This is just helpful for when you're looking back at your repo and you want to see what files were included and why they were changed. So I'm just going to say initial commit because it's our first commit to this repo. So now after we've typed in this message, above this input box there's a little check mark, and that's the commit. So when we hit that button, you'll see all our files have been committed, but they haven't been pushed yet.
and it was like so just object and there's only
So now to get our local commit to our repo, like I said, it's always best to pull before you push. Obviously, we're not going to be pulling anything, so it'll probably give us a warning. Yep, there's an empty repo, so you can't pull anything. So there's a little 3 dots that gives you like a little drop down with a bunch of options. And I just hit pull. But again, it's an empty repo, so there's nothing to pull, so it just throws a little warning. So then after we pull, we can push to our repo, and that's what finally gets our code out there to our repository.
Mine said configuration specifies
Mine says that too. Mine says that too.
I think that's the default error if you're pulling an empty repo. So we haven't done anything yet, but we're going to push, which will then send our code out to our repo.
I would say no. So I think that would be one yeah, those sometimes will go away if you don't worry about it. Yeah.
So again, I'm going to hit push, and that will send our code out to the repo. Say no. No. So my understanding of that is it'll periodically run git pull, even if you don't specify it. So if you have a large team that's working on a repo, it will get in their code. I think you can set it so like every time you open like the folder, it'll run git pull, so then you never have conflicts. All right, so now our code is on the repo. I think I might have not gotten rid of those yet. Do you have an error message?
So we have to get the file in the right place. So right now you're still in your starter. Right, so you can create a folder that you give to also you create okay, so we need a separate folder. Alright, so we do that and then I can put that file. Oh, there you go. Yeah. I think you get all this font. Right. Yeah, all this font that you show like we have like 63 changes for the first file. Yeah. So I ran a text file through the generator. Yeah, the tool. And that will give you all the files that you need, and then also give you the style sheet with all the text properties. Most of the time, I use Google Fonts because they have the image selection. It's easy. You just put it up, like a style sheet. But this one looks really close to the first one. Yes, it's a folder that you're starting. You're pushing the whole thing. Really. So now to view the
Site, there's not going to be anything there really. So we can close. After we've done this, we can get rid of this starter folder, just so it doesn't cause any confusion.
So you state your changes. You get the call, you get the off, you have to for extra. So you're trying to remember that. If you were to change the file, I'm not going to Yep.
I always say that you have to do stuff.
Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah, that's it.
So I know we're at 8:30. We're not going to get into any code tonight, just because we're at the end. But do you guys want to hook this up to Netlify so every time you push and pull, we can get a site going? All right. So let's go to, let's open up a new tab, and we'll go to Netlify. We'll get this out of the way. Netlify.org, I think. Is it .com? Yep, .com. Netlify. I did say that, sorry. I thought it was .org. Cache corrected. And then to get started, I already have an account, so I'm going to log in, but just hit the sign up button. And you can then sign up with one of the following and just use your GitHub because we're going to be connecting our repos from that anyway. If you already have your credentials saved, it might auto-populate those for you. But I always forget my password. So I'm just going to log in, and it's already got my GitHub credentials. If you sign up, you should be brought to a screen something like this, but again, you won't have any of these items here. These are just previous sites that I've used to Netlify. That shows them there. And this is actually where I host my personal site as well. Everybody at this step. So we're just going to hit new site from Git. And it doesn't recognize we're signed up with GitHub, so we'll just hit GitHub again. And then this will show up a list of all the repositories that you have on your GitHub. So I don't know if you guys created one last time with Chrissy, but obviously we're just going to pick our Netflix one that we created. And so for this, for me, it's the one I just created, CIC Netflix Repo. You should have to.
Yes, GitHub will ask you to kind of allow Netlify, so you'll hit install.
I've already done this, so I don't get that little pop-up. I've already authorized it. But yes, hit install on that pop-up. So you can kind of see after we've done that, we can pick our branch to deploy. So obviously we're on master, we're just going to work off master. You really only have to get into branching when you're working on real world projects with team members. That's when branches become helpful. We don't need a build command. By default, it will build every time we just run push. So when we push our code, it will update our site. And then publish directory, again, we don't have to change that either. So we don't have to do anything here. So if we just hit deploy site, you see that it's created one, and it says site deploy in progress. And it'll give this weird name up in the upper left. It auto generates a domain name for you by default, but we can change that. Yeah. What's up? Oh yeah. Okay. Yep. So after we've gone to that URL, we can go to domain settings. And if we click that link, that's just our default link that they gave us. We can see that this actually is our starter file, because if we look in the upper tab, there's Netflix. We don't have any styles behind it yet, but it is opening the right files. What do you mean opening?
we're supposed to see the line that flips. That's what I meant.
In the title. So if you click that link that generated, it will just bring you to an empty page, but you'll see that is our starter file. So it'll be blank because we haven't added the cells. Take a look. Nope. So by default, if it's free, if you don't want a domain that doesn't have .netlify attached to it, but if you go to the General tab on the left, and then at the bottom of that first box, there's Change Site Name. Click on that, and you can pretty much change that to anything you want. It'll actually be the URL you can access it. Yep, so if you go to General tab, and then in the first box at the bottom, I think there's So for example, I just changed mine to CIC Netflix Video. So when you copy it, you type the folder to Css starter, which is fine. Just when you're printing Netlify to read those files, you just have to go to that folder. So that's fine. So if you go back to your Netlify, your site. So if you copy So we can still use that folder. You just have to go to Netlify.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Like, you can see the whole time we're showing you guys like on the file. Like, we'll be doing the same thing over and over. Every time we change our code, we're going to push it to our GitHub. And so we can see. Yeah, right.
So now, these are, you know, where you might have on stage files that are open up here. You might see that's the same thing we did before. So that's my and and then we're going to put the dots again. So now those files should be in the right directory, so let's go back to your website. Again, since we just pushed that file will rebuild. If you want to change that domain, because it's kind of
My school email. I use it broke up. What's that?
Now you can reach your site. Wednesday will actually. Yeah, just remember. Reminder guys, tomorrow's paper.
Yeah.
We'll be going there.
I don't like introducing myself.
We've already done it once. It'll be fun.
But I'll have a station just set up at like one of the tables. Just come with any questions you've up to this point or questions you might have on your capstone projects.